Good afternoon, everyone. We are so happy that you have joined today's session where we're going to talk about enrollment. My name is Pam Brooks, and I am the Senior Account Manager for the New Jersey programs here at PPL. We are super excited to have with us Ryann Siclari. She is going to talk us through our next session. And before she does, I'd like to just tell you a little bit about Ryann. Ryann is a principal with the law firm Porzio, Bromberg, and Newman. In 2008, she received her Bachelor's of Arts degree, magna cum laude, from the University of Alaska Fairbanks. Subsequently, she graduated magna cum laude from Widener University School of Law in 2011. In an effort to expand the expertise, Ryann obtained her Master's of Law in Elder Law in 2017. Ryann also obtained her certification as a certified elder law attorney by the ABA accredited National Elder Law Foundation in 2021. Currently, Ryann concentrates her practices on a wide range of elder and disability law issues, including long-term care, government benefits planning and advocacy, estate and trust administration, and estate planning. Ryann speaks regularly to the community, other attorneys, and state agencies on topics affecting people who are aging or disabled. And with no further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Ryann. Ryann, take us away.
Thank you so much. So my slides are going to be coming up here in a second. We'll get going on the enrollment process. So I'm here today to talk about the Personal Preference Program, or PPP. Next slide, please. And basically, I want to start by telling you guys about what the agenda is going to be today. So I want to start by telling you about which Medicaid programs will cover personal care assistance, or PCA. We're talking about our home health aides, right? Which Medicaid programs cover it? And then we're going to talk about, well, okay, you're in a Medicaid program that covers it. What are the eligibility criteria to receive it? Then we're going to talk about, okay, now you get the PCA assistance. How do you service those hours? Do we want to use an agency, or do we want to use the PPP program? And if we elect to use the PPP program, how do we enroll in it? Next slide, please. So when we're talking about the Medicaid eligibility groups, there are, I call them doors, right? Which door do you go through? And because there are not just one, and I think that's a common misconception with the Medicaid program. I think there's a lot of individuals who believe you are either Medicaid eligible or you are not Medicaid eligible. And that's simply not the case, because there are many eligibility groups. Are you eligible for a particular Medicaid program is really the question. And some of the programs that are out there include Affordable Care Act Medicaid, commonly also called MAGI, or Modified Adjusted Gross Income Medicaid. That program is a DOOR, or Medicaid eligibility group, for individuals who are under the age of 65 and not Medicare eligible and have income below the prescribed limits. There's also the group of programs for aged people 65 and older, blind or disabled. Those programs include the Disabled Adult Child DOOR, or eligibility group, the Aged, Blind, Disabled, or New Jersey Care Program, which is also called the Community Medicaid Program, depending on who you're talking to. There's also the Workability Program for the aged, blind, disabled population. And that one was significantly expanded by legislation, and it has finally become effective. So individuals who are disabled and who are working, the eligibility for workability has now grown, right? You can be older, you can have higher income, you can have higher resources. So that program for people with disabilities is significantly expanded recently. And then there's also the Managed Long-Term Services and Supports Program. Sorry, I see there's a little typo on the screen there. That should be supports, not sounds. And that program is for individuals who are aged or disabled and have income up to a certain eligibility limit. It's $2,829 a month. And if you're over that limit, you have extra steps you got to take in the form of establishing a qualified income trust. So you'll note each one of these programs for aged, blind, or disabled individuals has different eligibility criteria. So just because you don't qualify for one doesn't mean you might not qualify for another. Another grouping of eligibility for Medicaid is through the DDD, the Division of Developmental Disabilities. These programs come about for individuals who don't qualify for Medicaid under any of the other doors, but they qualify for DDD services, but for the fact that they don't have another Medicaid door. Then they look at these additional two groups. One is the supports program, and one is the community care program. And that's meant to give Medicaid eligibility to individuals who wouldn't otherwise qualify, as long as they meet the eligibility for those particular programs. Next slide, please. So when we're talking about the Medicaid eligibility groups, I often get the question is, why are there different groups? Why don't we just have it one expanded group? And part of the reason is that different eligibility groups come with different packages of benefits. So for the Affordable Care Act program, they come with what's called the Alternative Benefit Plan. And we're going to get into what these plans cover in a minute. Most of the groups have what's called the Family Care Plan A package of benefits. And that Managed Long-Term Services and Supports program has even more benefits. It's got the Family Care Plan A, plus it has a special package of benefits. Next slide, please. So I bring up this MLTSS program because I find that when I'm talking to individuals, they believe that they need to be in this particular eligibility group in order to receive personal care assistance or home health aid assistance. And so while this program does provide an expanded package of home and community-based services like home delivered meals, medication dispensing devices, private duty nursing, it also covers personal care assistance, but so does every other program, because that personal care assistance service is a basic service of both the Family Care Plan A and the Alternative Benefit Plan. So I go through all of these motions so that you understand that you just need to qualify for Medicaid. It doesn't matter which eligibility group you're in, as long as you qualify for one of the doors, you can qualify for personal care assistance. Next slide, please. Once you are eligible in one of the doors, right? You qualify for Medicaid, now what? You get assigned a managed care organization, or an MCO. In New Jersey, we have 5 Medicaid managed care organizations. It's Horizon, United, Aetna, Fidelis, which was formerly WellCare, WellPoint, which was formerly AmeriGroup. When you file your Medicaid application, you do get to decide which Medicaid managed care organization you'll get put into. My experience is that they often put you in whichever one they want to put you in, regardless of what you put on your application. But that's okay, because once you're approved, you can call New Jersey Family Care and change your managed care organization assignment. So if you're not happy with the particular MCO, you can change your assignment. So once you are Medicaid eligible and you're enrolled with a managed care organization, then you tell the managed care organization, hey, I need a home health aide. I need help at home. And the managed care organization will send a nurse out to do an assessment to determine how many hours of personal care assistance you are eligible for. Next slide, please. In making that determination, they complete what's called the Personal Care Assistance Assessment Tool. This tool is produced by the state, and it is used by all of the managed care organizations to determine how many hours of personal care assistance an individual is eligible for. I put on here a little snippet of what the tool looks like. I apologize, it's a little small, but it basically, this example is ambulation/mobility assistance. The process of moving between locations, i.e. room to room, includes pushing a wheelchair, includes contact guard. And you'll see they only allow up to 30 minutes per day of assistance with mobility. So it's geared towards a lower number. Now, they give the ability to adjust if the nurse believes there's good reason to go above the recommended amount, but it is geared towards a maximum of 40 hours and increased on a case-by-case basis. So it's in large part dependent on the nurse who comes out to assess you. And that assessment is redone on a periodic basis. But why do the number of hours matter? Well, that's how many hours an aide would come out on a weekly basis to assist the person. But for PPP purposes, the number of hours ultimately will equate to a budget that you can use to pay your caregivers. Next slide, please. Oh, I'm missing a few slides. I apologize. They changed my slides at the last minute and a few of them are not here. So let me just open my slides and I will go through that with you guys. So give me 1 second. I don't know if let me just share my screen. Nope, it won't let me. So I'm just going to go through it with you orally because I can't share my slide. I apologize for the confusion.
And while you are talking, I'll just see if I can pull them up and share.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
The next thing I was going to explain to you is, okay, what do you need to have to qualify for PCA assistance, right? So we said you have Medicaid, you have an MCO, you tell the MCO you want services, they come out and assess you. You still have to meet a minimum requirement to get PCA assistance at all. It's not automatic. So the eligibility rule states that an individual must need moderate or greater hands-on assistance in at least one activity of daily living. So bathing, dressing, eating, ambulating, toileting. So moderate or greater assistance in one of those things, or minimal assistance, so a smaller amount in 3 of those things, one of which must be hands-on. So that's a lot of information. Let me break that down for you a little bit. So if you are someone who only needs minimal assistance in a lot of different things, you could have a situation where you need to be reminded, right? Hey, you can't wear in the winter, you can't wear sandals. That's not safe. That's minimal assistance with dressing. Or I put the clothes out, but you can put your own clothes on. That might be minimal assistance. Neither one of those things are actually hands-on, right? I'm not putting my hands and helping someone do something. So if that was it, you just needed those things, you actually would not qualify for personal care assistance. I had a client once where the hands-on assistance we used was that her father had to clip her nails. She couldn't clip her own nails. So he had to assist her with clipping her nails. And that was the one hands-on that we had to hang our hat on eligibility for that personal care assistance. So minimal assistance in 3, as long as one of them is hands-on. So then the other piece that I think is really critical for you to understand is PCA is appealable on all fronts, right? So let's say your managed care organization says, well, you don't qualify. You don't meet the minimum requirements to be eligible at all. So you get 0 hours. That's appealable. You have the right to file what's called a fair hearing and ask that a judge, an administrative law judge, determine if you meet the minimum eligibility criteria to qualify. Or let's say you get assessed for 5 hours a week and it's simply not enough to meet your needs. You can appeal that to request a higher number of hours, right? You would review that personal care assessment tool completed by the nurse, and you'd say, wait a minute, she only gave me 5 minutes a week for ambulation. I need the full 30 because of these reasons. So I always like to make sure everybody understands that the PCA piece is appealable. It's not a, well, they've decided and there's nothing I can do to change that. That is simply not the case. So now we're just repeating this process, right? You applied for Medicaid. You got in one of the doors. You got your managed care organization. You said you wanted PCA assistance. They did an assessment. You got awarded hours. Now what? How do you want to service those hours? You have 2 options on how to service your PCA hours. Option 1 is you can use an agency that contracts with the managed care organization. So you can't just say, well, I want to use this home health aid company. They've got to have a contract with your particular managed care organization. So typically you would find out from your care manager at the MCO which home health aid companies that they contract with. You know, we all know what the problems with that are, right? It can be unreliable. You get aides that call out and there's no replacements. I mean, we could go on and on about all the pitfalls of using an agency to service those hours. So that brings us to our alternative, which is the Personal Preference Program, or PPP. Now, PPL, the public partnerships, is the administrative agency of the program, so they will be the ones to ultimately help you set it up. But the way that it first starts is you tell your managed care organization, I want to service my PCA hours with the PPP program. That allows you to choose your caregivers, right? So you have the number of hours you were assessed for. Ultimately, that will equate to a budget. And with that budget, you can hire your aides. More, right? It doesn't have to be one, it could be many. But you would ultimately, you'd have this budget that you could pay them. And you could say, you know what, this particular aide is highly skilled. She should be paid $20 an hour. But this particular aide really only helps me a little bit here during the day. It's not as highly skilled. They might be $15 an hour. So you get to use your budget in a way that works for you. Now, the PPP program, once you tell your managed care organization, they'll make a referral to PPL. PPL will then outreach you to set up your enrollment in the PPP program. And it's a bit of a process, right? Because they have to get workers' compensation insurance. They have to get a tax identification number. They've got to enroll the employees into their program. So we do have to go through all of those motions to get enrolled in PPP. But once you're in the program and you have your budget, you can use that budget in a way that works for you. Now, I will say that some people are surprised to learn that it's not such a simple calculation, right? It's a situation where we have the number of hours. There is a calculation where we multiply it by, because each month is technically more than 4 weeks, multiply it by 4.33. Then we multiply it by the number of days, and we take out fees for PPL. So there's some things involved to get to your ultimate budget, and it's going to be slightly less because the different fees involved to pay your workers' compensation and your taxes and the things that you've got to pay as an employer of a caregiver. So that is something that happens. And once you're enrolled, there's a website. Your caregivers submit their timesheets. You approve their timesheets. They get a paycheck and a W-2. They are legitimately employed as your caregivers so that they can fill your need in the way that you need it, right? So if you have 20 hours a week that you need help and your budget allows for it, you may say, okay, I only need 2 hours a day to help me get out of bed and get my shower and get dressed, Monday through Friday, but I have, a family member or somebody who I don't need to necessarily pay that can help me on the other days. So I might use my budget that way. Or you might say I need 1 hour in the morning, 1 hour in the afternoon. So it gives you'd never be able to do that with an agency, right? They're not going to send somebody for 1 hour in the morning, maybe 2, probably not, right? They only want to send people for bigger chunks of time. And that just may not be functional for you, right? You may need only somebody for a short period of time in the morning and a short period of time in the evening or something in the middle of the day. You can hire family members under the PPP program, right? You have a sibling or a spouse or a friend, a neighbor, a niece, a nephew that helps you, and you can compensate them for that help using PPP to pay your caregivers. So I am a big fan of how the PPP program helps an individual structure caregiving in a way that's functional for them. If I had to say the things that I think are pitfalls include the more you pay a caregiver, the fewer hours you ultimately get, right? So if you pay your caregiver $25 an hour, you're not going to get the full number of hours that you were awarded. That's why you kind of get flexibility in choosing how much you pay. So I will say that comes as a surprise sometimes to people, is that once they give that higher hourly rate, that they may ultimately receive fewer hours of help. So it's a balance, but it's a balance that you get to choose, right? You get to decide who the caregiver, you get to decide the rate that you pay them. They enroll with the program, they get their paycheck. So from my perspective, I think that the PPP program is a better and more functional way to service your PCA hours. I think a lot of people use family members to service those hours, but you don't have to, right? You could hire just a third-party caregiver. If you found, you post an ad and you find someone that fits that need, you can hire a person you don't know to be a caregiver. Now you may want to have the background screening done by PPL. They can do those things for you. That is not something you would need to do. And it gives you the flexibility to use a caregiver that works, right? They come into your home only on the hours that you need them. So I apologize for the technical snafu that we had today with the slides. I don't know what happened to the last chunk of my presentation, but I'm hopeful that if they distribute the materials, we can add that stuff in. But I'm happy to, and I know we've only got a few minutes left, so I want to give anybody an opportunity, if you have questions about enrollment in the PPP program, Medicaid enrollment in order to get your PCA assistance, or anything related to the PCA or PPP programs, I am happy to answer those questions. If I don't have any questions, I'm happy to talk to you guys a little bit more about it, but we've only got a few minutes left. So take advantage now while we still have a couple of minutes to get those questions in.
Yes, Ryann, we do have a few more minutes. We thank you so much for that amazing presentation. We apologize that some of your screens, your slides may not have been there, but we will definitely share them for sure. We have not received any questions just yet. So if there's
that means I did such a good job that nobody has questions about it.
We have not received any questions just yet. So if you want to expound on anything or wait for a few questions, we do have 2 more minutes before we join our next session.
Yeah, I think the only thing that I would add is the intersection of DDD and Medicaid. I think there's a lot of confusion about that, at least when I speak to my own clients about how those things intersect. You know, there was a time where they were very separate and distinct programs, but more recently, it became a requirement that in order to be DDD eligible, you be Medicaid eligible. And I think part of that is budgetary, right? If Medicaid's going to cover your PCA assistance, DDD doesn't have to cover your PCA assistance, and you can use your DDD budget for other things. So it kind of allows those two programs to work together to give you the maximum benefit that they can. So, you know, to the extent you're eligible for services through your Medicaid benefit, take advantage of it, right? Tell your managed care organization that you need PCA hours. Have them come out and do the assessment. You know, don't struggle to have your family members provide services when they could be compensated for those things, right? It's a win-win for everybody. They get to keep doing things and they get to be compensated for it.
And we do have a question, if you don't mind, Ryann. Someone said this is probably the most useful presentation for our needs. Can we get the recording as I missed the first part, or is there someone that I can contact with questions? And they also were asking if you could help in calculating PPP hours.
So
and also, I apologize. My understanding is that we will send out the recording to all attendees so that they will have the recording of today's presentation.
Perfect. And so the answer is there is a formula to calculate what the budget is, right? It's not a you know, off the cuff, this person gets this, that person gets that. There is a formula. And the formula is going to start by how many hours of PCA assistance were you awarded under the PCA assessment. That's the starting point of the formula. So without knowing that number, you really can't calculate a budget. So that's the question I would say, get that information from your managed care organization, and then you can go forward with calculating what your budget would be. And again, deducting the necessary fees and expenses. That's part of the PPP enrollment process, by the way, just to be clear. They will go through all of that with you. You're not going to be in the dark about what your budget is and what the fees are. They will very explicitly say, here's your budget, here's the fees, and this is how we get to the ultimate amount that you have to spend. So that they are excellent about doing in the enrollment process.
Awesome. Ryann, we can't thank you enough for your time and your expertise in bringing this information to us. We really appreciate it. So we just want to say again, on behalf of PPL, thank you so much. And for those who have joined us, we're hoping that you are able to join us for our next session that's getting ready to begin in a few seconds on expanding the direct care workforce. Again, thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody.
Take care.